Hello and welcome. I call the channel the Jungle Nook, and today we're going to be talking about the houseplants and specifically pest control. Now, yes, I do use insecticides and I'm going to show them. I'll show what I use, when, how, and why I would use them, as well as another product that I have here, an insecticidal soap that's very effective, but I haven't needed to use it yet. But I do have it here, and I'll show you that too, just in case you're having a real major problem and you need something a little stronger. The thing is, the more effective the insecticide, and I'm not referring to the home remedy ones that can be very effective, things like maybe just something like dish soap in with water. I'm talking about the man-made industrial insecticides, like insecticidal soaps. They can be really harmful to the plant itself. They do what they promise, and they knock the insects out right away for you, but they can have a lot of side effects for the plants. You might use a soap like this, an insecticidal soap, and it takes care of the insects. But then for a few weeks after that, you still see the plant struggling, more leaves dropping, discoloration. The plant just doesn't look healthy. And a lot of times, you might be thinking that that's because of all the stress that was put on the plant from the insects, and that probably is playing a role in that. But the insecticide itself, that could have compromised the immune system even further, its ability to produce its own natural insecticide, because a healthy plant can be very efficient in producing its own insecticides. Things like caffeine and nicotine. Those are deadly to insects, and plants will actually produce them all on their own and actually kill insects that are feeding on them. And we're going to talk about all that in this video. I know that, when you first clicked on this, if you're new to the channel, you might have been thinking we're only going to be talking about insecticides. But although I will stay on topic, we're going to talk about a bunch of things that might surprise you that are very effective and definitely totally related to pest control. Now, the reason I keep saying pest control is I don't think, especially for me, with how many plants I have and how closely they are together in such a small confined area, it's not a realistic goal for me to totally eradicate, all the pests that I have. I do have spider mites and fungus gnats, as well as thrips. But, when we get started, we're going to go around. I'll continue to give information, but you're going to get a plant room tour. You're going to see pretty much every single plant in this room. You might even find a few insects on some of these plants too. But what you're not going to notice is any plants in distress or any damage on the plants. And I do not pull plants out of this room before a video. If you've been following the channel, you guys are well aware of that, because I don't even move my plants around that much. They're pretty much in the same spot all the time, and they're always here. But yeah, my plants are pretty good at defending themselves. But I do use insecticides, and we're going to talk about that. And it really is a big part in why my plants don't have very many problems. So we're going to start with the plant room tour, where I'll give some information, and then we will take a close look at the insecticides that I use. So the first thing I want to say is I don't have perfect plants. You are going to see plants, but brown edges, yellow leaves, things like that. But those issues were not caused by insects while they were in the house. And you will even probably come across a few leaves that you can tell an insect had been chewing on it. And those were plants that I had outside over the summer. I do move as many of my plants outdoors as I can for as long as I can over the summer. And those are primarily the plants that get treated with insecticides before I bring them back into the house. However, the reason I have such shiny foliage is I use a product called neem oil. And neem oil is a all-purpose pest prevention. It's an insecticide, miticide, and fungicide. It's a very weak product, but it's natural. It comes from the neem tree, and it helps in pest control. It's not a product you would use for any kind of major outbreak, but that product will actually get absorbed right into the plant, into the cells, into the tissue, and then that, along with the plant's natural ability to defend itself, is pretty sufficient for pest control. But in order for a plant really have a good chance of protecting and defend itself, it has to be a healthy plant. You have to make sure you're providing it with all of the nutrients that it needs. And most all-purpose plant foods, plant fertilizers, will have all of the basic nutrients that they require. And I do have a video on fertilizing houseplants, where I get into detail about the different nutrients and how to fertilize and when to fertilize potted plants. But besides the nutrients, they're also going to need an adequate amount of water, as well as a stable level of humidity. You don't want major fluctuations, and you want a warm home, not too cold, not too hot. If you're providing that, nutrients, water, warmth, and stable humidity, then the plant will be able to adequately engage in photosynthesis while it's in light. If you're missing any of those other components I just mentioned, it's not going to have what it needs to really take full advantage of light while it's in the light. And it has to engage in photosynthesis because it does use the nutrients that you're providing in the fertilizers or in your organic soils. But when it's engaging in photosynthesis, that's where it's getting its sugars, starches, oils, and fats, and proteins, things like that, that it's not getting through its root structure. And when it's able to engage in photosynthesis adequately and has all of its requirements met, the plant's able to regulate its hormones. And what the hormones do, that is how the plant is able to sense the environment it's in. It knows when, through the hormones, it knows there's moisture in the soil and nutrients in the soil, so it starts to absorb them. It knows it's in the light, so it's time to begin engaging in photosynthesis. It also knows when it's being attacked by insects or other types of pests. That's how the plant communicates with itself to, really ramp up and activate that immune system, begin to produce insecticides or its own fungicides and all that stuff, because it will produce them on their own, providing it has the resources to do so. But when a plant is healthy and happy and has everything it needs, it's able to regulate its immune system and its hormones efficiently, and it's able to promote pheromones. Pheromones are real important because that's how plants communicate with other plants, even different types of plants. Because plants are really slow to react. A plant can get an infection, a disease, or being attacked by insects, but it first has to realize it's getting attacked, that it has a problem, then has to activate its immune system and produce whatever it needs, an insecticide or a fungicide, and then it has to move those compounds to where they're needed, and that all takes time. And that's where the pheromones come into play. While it's ramping up all of its defenses and getting ready to prepare to battle it out with whatever the problem is, whatever's attacking it, pheromones are being released so that plants that haven't even come into contact with whatever the issue is, they're already, activating their immune system and getting everything in place so that when that problem gets to it, if it gets to it, it's already ready to start fighting off whatever the problem is. Here's where the overuse of insecticides can come in.
Let's say, just give an example of a situation. Let's say you have a plant in a room that you only water once a week. And you go into that room, you water the plant, and maybe you notice it has a few yellow leaves on it or something. And you remove them because you know that a yellow leaf is actually like a beacon to insects. They can see that yellow in the leaf. And they know it's an easy target because the leaf is it's being shut off. It's going to start decomposing. It's going to be a softer tissue. Or when that leaf falls off, right after it falls off, there's a small window of time where that plant has to heal that little wound. And that's a great access point for certain insects and things to get into. Perhaps the leaf is only turning yellow because it's not getting enough light. And the plant is hoping that, that leaf will start getting light again. So it's trying to keep that leaf alive, but it's not a real efficient use of the plant's resources. So we're removing those undesirable leaves. You remove the leaves, you water the plant. What you didn't notice was that the plant has an infestation of insects. And then the next week when you go in there to water the plant again, now the plant's in distress. You see it's wilting. It don't look that good. The numbers of the insects have increased even more. They're more noticeable. That could be a time where you might want to try to use some sort of an insecticide. Perhaps you just take some regular Dawn dish soap, fill up a spray bottle. Just a few drops per cup of water is a good mixture. Take it over to the sink or maybe outside or to your tub and spray that plant down really good. A lot of times that will knock out the insects for you. That's a lot better than using a really harsh insecticide. Perhaps it's a plant like a philodendron or a pothos or something with some bigger leaves where you can actually wipe off each leaf. Now, let's say that the plant, you notice it has some insects on it, but the plant still looks really healthy. Really, all you might need to do is take a damp rag and wipe those insects off of the leaves and the stems. And maybe you're not getting all life cycles of that insect off. Maybe it's an insect that lays eggs in the soil. And you're not addressing that, and they're going to hatch and come out. Well, you might have to come back, every few days for a couple weeks and just wipe off those leaves and stem. That could be efficient because now you're keeping the number of insects down and the damage they're causing to the plant down and giving the plant time to produce its own natural resources. If it is a healthy plant but has insects on it, but you don't see any signs the plant's not wilting, the leaves aren't curling or turning yellow, everything looks fine, but you see the insects and you spray it with a harsh insecticide, that's going to do a lot of different things potentially. It can interfere with that hormone regulation. You can even harm its immune system so that it's not able to fight off that problem. I'm saying all on its own, but you're actually intervening and helping, but it's in a very invasive way. Just wiping the leaves off, removing those insects for a couple of weeks could be all the plant needed to produce its own natural defenses. I have a banana plant. We'll take a closer look at that when we're talking about the insecticides. I actually have to clean that up and treat it with an insecticide. So we'll take a closer look at the banana plant later. When I brought that banana plant in from outside, I did spray it down with the neem oil, but I have another insecticide that I put into the soil. It's a little harsher. I didn't want to use that insecticide, and the plant looked really healthy. I looked the plant over and I didn't see anything on it. But when I brought it into the house, after several weeks, maybe a month, I noticed some spider mites on the plant. Actually, a pretty severe outbreak. I was looking at the plant really close and noticed that it also had some thrips on it. Now, I wasn't sure what to do at that moment because all of my plants had gone a little too long without getting fertilizer. I wanted to put some slow release granular fertilizer on all my plants, and I have over 150 of them. Plus everything was in need of watering, and I also had 3 plants that I knew of that needed to be up potted. So I had already gathered up and even went and bought a few extra pots, and I had mixed up my potting mix and had a table set up in the house because it was cold outside. I didn't want to do it outside, and I was going to look over some more plants to see if anything else needed to be up potted. And I'd spent time getting ready to do this. That's when I noticed the insects on the banana plant. Now, this hobby should be stress-free. It should be relaxing and rewarding. And I do not want to get into a situation where I'm running around taking care of problems all the time. My theory behind that is if you're always fixated and focused on dealing with problems, that's when other aspects of the hobby, different things you're doing to care for your plants, you can start to slack on that. So all I did, I slid that banana plant over a little bit to make sure it wasn't touching other plants. And I just sprayed that one plant down and wiped off the leaves. And then I went back to what I had already planned to do, and I took care of all of that. And because those were the chores that I had planned on doing and that I had time to do that weekend. It wasn't till the following weekend that I went and wiped down more plants that were around it, and I gave the room a more thorough inspection. And while I was doing that more thorough inspection, I did notice that some of the plants that were around that banana plant did have a couple of thrips, but they were already dead. Now, this is an assumption. I'm assuming that was because those plants had previously also been treated with the neem oil. They were real healthy, and their immune system, along with that insecticide that I used, the plants killed them off all on their own. I did still wipe them all down again, but I have never seen any more thrips in that area. But that banana plant does have another outbreak of spider mites, and we'll look it over real well. Maybe we will find some thrips on there. But I didn't panic. I didn't put off the fertilization and the uppotting, and it wasn't a waste of time for me to get all these materials and supplies out and then just put them away without taking care of what I wanted to do, and then the next weekend have to get them out again. I guess I'm a little off topic now maybe, but I try not to ever panic or be in a rush. I didn't go grab a real harsh insecticide because I seen thrips, and I know that thrips can be a real problem. That next week when I looked over the plant, yeah, there were a lot more spider mites and a few more thrips, but I took care of the problem, and I feel that I did it efficiently. I still took care of the other plant chores first, and when I had time I got back, I took care of that problem. I wasn't stressed out, although I will admit, during that week I did think about those thrips a few times. So there's 2 more things I want to talk about before we get into the insecticide, and that's humidity and airflow. And these 2 things are kind of a catch-22. For humidity, I like to keep my humidity between 45 and 55%. And it might seem a little low, but most of my plants have thick leaves. I have a lot of philodendron, pothos, monstera, things like that. But I do also have ferns. The thicker leaf plants, they're a little more resistant to low humidity, whereas those thinner leaf plants like ferns, they can dry out a little easier. And I do struggle with my ferns, and I will over winter. I'm losing quite a few of the leaves, but they still look pretty good by the time summer gets here, and they bounce back. But by keeping my humidity lower like that, that's making the environment, the conditions in the rooms with my plants, less hospitable to insects, mold, mildew, fungus, things like that. Insects, they're a lot more active and they reproduce a lot quicker in a higher humidity, especially of 60% or above. The same thing with the molds and funguses, mildews, things like that as well, pathogens. So I keep a lower humidity level. I know everybody's situation and environment where they live is different, but for me, it's easier for me to keep that lower humidity level. I struggle just to keep my humidity level in the 40s sometimes. I can't even get to 50. Keeping your humidity level above 40% is good for your house because it prevents things from drying out, like wood floors and stuff and furniture. And keeping it below 60 is also good because it prevents molds and mildews and stuff in your home, which is a better, safer situation for your house as well as yourself. Now, as far as airflow is concerned, good air circulation is important, and especially if you have really low or really high humidity. It will at least help to stabilize that humidity level in your house, having good airflow. But don't confuse good airflow with creating wind or even a breeze, for instance, using fans. You don't really need to see or want to see the leaves actually moving on the plants. That's because if you're creating that much airflow, you're actually helping to facilitate the spores and stuff from the funguses and helping the insects to move around the room and get onto different plants. I do use fans if my humidity level, which is very rare, but if my humidity level's going above 60%, and I know it's going to stay there for a while, maybe it's warm outside and we're going to be getting a lot of rain or something like that, I may turn the fans on, but I keep them at a low setting, and a lot of times I just aim them right at the ceiling just so that it's drawing air from down at the floor up to the ceiling and just creating a little bit of air circulation that way. So I'm not helping the pests to migrate from one plant to another. Also, I don't open my windows. I have forced air in the winter and central air in the summer, and that's plenty to create enough air circulation in the house where it's beneficial for the plants. And I have enough plants where it helps to keep my air in the house nice. It's not stuffy in here at all. But I don't open the windows because that's how insects will get in. Yeah, they'll still be attached to you and your clothing or the things you're bringing into the house and when you open your doors and stuff, but having an open window is a great way for insects to get in because a lot of them can get right through those holes in your screen, and especially spores from pathogens and different types of funguses or molds. Not only that, but most of us probably have our plants right up by the window. And remember those pheromones we were talking about, which is warning other plants of problems. Insects can also sense those pheromones, and when a plant is in distress, will follow them back to the plant. They're sensing the pheromones, going to the plant, and then those yellow leaves, if you're not removing them, that's also a beacon for them as well to go to the plant. They see the color differently than us, but that yellow leaf draws them in as well. I keep my windows closed in this house, and that is because of the plants. Regarding the insecticides that I use, any plant coming into the house, either a new purchase or something that spent the summer out on the porch, I'll use this product right here. And this is neem oil. It's a natural insecticide, pesticide, and miticide. And what this does here, this will actually kill on contact, but it will also get absorbed right into the plant and get into the cells and the tissue. And when an insect or a fungus or something gets on the plant and starts to feed or attack the plant, this will help to defend it. This is a product that's great to help with prevention of pests in conjunction with a healthy plant. It's really mild. It's not what you would want to use when dealing with an existing outbreak. Something a little more severe that you need to get rid of all those insects or whatever the problem is almost immediately. But it's great for prevention. It's also what I use to make my leaves nice and shiny. Now, something else for those new plants coming in, I will use a product that you put right into or on the soil. And this product will also get absorbed right into the plant as well. It's a little more effective against insects, and it also will have an adverse effect on the beneficial microorganisms within the soil, as well as this product will too if you're spraying the soil itself. But this one you actually put directly into or on the soil, and it's a great insecticide for anything that's in the plant. And again, both of these are systemic insecticides, and systemic means it gets absorbed into the plant tissue. And both of these we'll be using on that banana plant out there when we go out there, and I'll show you how I use these two products. Now, when I use something that goes into the soil, and I know it's going to cause the little microenvironment, the little ecosystem that's in the pot of all the beneficial microorganisms that are breaking down the organic material, turning them into fertilizer or nutrients. This will cause those populations to go down, but they will rebound over time. But I use this product right here. This is Bush Doctor Microbrew. And although there are some really weak nutrients in here, it's not technically used as a fertilizer, because even the amounts that are listed on the bottle are not what's going to be in it when you use it, because it's full of microorganisms and they need that nutrients to survive. This is a liquid solution. It's a concentrated solution. You add it to water. But the microorganisms in here are feeding off of that nutrients. And it's those microorganisms that you want to add back into the plant after you use something that goes into the soil. You know, I would wait maybe a week, and before you add this, a day or two before that, flush the soil real good. Water the plant real good until you see water coming up. And that will help jumpstart that colony of microorganisms in the pot for you. Now, for a real bad infestation, that's when I would use an insecticidal soap right here. And this kills on contact, and it works within minutes. It's pretty harsh, but it's very effective for dealing with the insects. But like I said before, it can have some side effects. And you would use it as directed. And these types of products you'll usually want to spray once or twice a week for 2 or 3 weeks to make sure that you're getting all the different stages of the insects, or those that you didn't spray and maybe there were eggs and they hatched. You want to keep up on it for several weeks as directed. I would use it as directed. And if you have spots in the plant that you're not able to get to easily while spraying it, that's when I'd put a little bit in a cup. This is just a makeup brush. I would dip this in the makeup brush, and then you can actually brush the stems and underneath the leaves or the areas that you weren't able to get to with the spray. And you can get right into all little nooks and crevices that way. And that is pretty much everything that I talked about in this video, is how I deal with insects and what I do and how I do it, so that I've never really had any major problems. Even when I've had a couple of outbreaks, I was able to take care of it. I was able to take care of it without using the insecticidal soap. I just wiped everything off with the neem oil. So here's the banana plant. And these are what I use. These are little, they're magnifying glasses. And I'll give the plant a good look over to see if I can see anything. And I am seeing a bunch of fungus gnats, but they're all dead. And the spider mites on the webbing are definitely alive. They're moving. Oh, wow. Yeah, okay, so I have spider mites. Oh my God. Wow. I gotta spray under the leaves really good. Haven't come across a thrip yet, and this was the first plant I ever seen thrips on, and it's the only plant I ever seen them on where they were alive. I'm blowing on it a little bit when I see things that might be an insect or something, to see if they start moving. I'll also look at the soil and tap the pot. See if I see any movement. Oh, fungus gnat just flew up. A bunch of fungus gnats just blew out at me. They just came flying out. I don't know if you're going to be able to see them, and I took the glasses off, so now, oh, right here. I can't tell. Well, I know down here there were some fungus gnats. I don't know if it's going to show up on the camera. Just trying to show you there's dead ones on there. Right there's a dead one. And I don't know if it's showing up, but right around there's a dead one. I'm going to start removing some of the leaves and some of the dead material. This leaf I'm taking right out. It's shaded. It's got a lot of spider bites. This is the most infected leaf that I have with the spider mites. All along in here where the I don't know, the stem part here. This leaf is really bad. And some of this material here, it's dead, it's decaying. I'm just going to get rid of it. I'm only peeling off the stuff that's coming off. It's already rotted and decayed. I'm not getting down to where it's still alive and cutting it there, but I'm peeling it back because there could be insects and pests down in here. And I'm gonna look around in the soil and even remove these small little bits that you might be thinking, hey, that's organic material. But with how it's laying right on top of the soil like this, that is great spots for insects and things to go. So I'm removing these out of here. Just the stuff that was laying on the soil. Got them out of here. Now what I'm going to do is I will start putting on that neem oil. And, you know, oil and water do not mix. It's a real good idea to really shake this up really good.
I'm not really spraying it all over. I don't want it to get on the other leaves because it's an oil and you want to really like rub it in and really polish up the leaf so that you don't have spots. It will leave spots. If you do this outside, you do not want to do this in the sunlight. Whenever you're spraying your plant with anything outside, especially when you're bringing it from in your house outside to do it, you don't want the sun to be hitting it because you don't want to burn the leaf. They'll act like little magnifying glasses, all the little droplets, and you could burn the leaves that way. Now I'm even going to spray some right on the paper towel. Well, actually, the first thing I'm going to do is around the edges of the leaf. I'm going to start wiping them off first. So that's where the spider mites like to be. It's right at the edges of the leaves or right along the stem. And I want to get these off first. You want to get all the edges. You want to do complete coverage. And when dealing with the neem oil, because it is an oil, you're not going to want to do this several times a week for a few weeks. You don't want to clog the pores. You don't want the oil clogging the pores and suffocating the plant. So the neem oil is just something once that they recommend you do no more than once every 3 weeks. But really, if I'm just using it to polish and for some added protection, and I'm just going to do this about once every 3 months. That's about it. And this way I know I'm keeping my leaves clean so they engage in photosynthesis better and they're nice and shiny. I love shiny leaves. And if I was doing multiple plants, I would definitely make sure I was using a new paper towel every time I went to another plant, because I don't want to be helping these guys migrate. Now the fungus gnats, I had a real problem with them. Fungus gnats, they lay their eggs in the soil, and the eggs have a much better chance of hatching if the soil is moist. So what I did is I went through and made sure all my plants and all the soil was well hydrated, and then I went a full week without watering anything, which is pretty unusual for the Nook. And I have seen a dramatic decrease. But I did go around and I tapped all of the pots. And there were a couple of pots that did have a bunch of them coming out. And what I did is I did spray those pots down with a little bit of that neem oil as well. I didn't use the other insecticide, the powder stuff that goes into the soil, which I'll be using in a minute, because it's a little more harsh and it would have been a little more invasive, taking out those microorganisms in the soil. So as you can see, though, the leaves are nice and shiny and they're dry now. That's actually how shiny they're gonna be. And this should be sufficient to control any insect problem on this plant for quite some time. I probably did not get rid of all of the spider mites, but I got rid of enough. And this plant has been suffering from spider mites for quite a while. That's what this damage is right here at the tips. That's what that is right there. And over here as well. So yeah, right there is some insect damage for sure. But now the other insecticide that I'm going to use, doesn't really matter too much the brand. What you're looking for is this word right here, systemic. That's what you want, a systemic insecticide. And this is for going right into the soil. And I know how much I'm supposed to use. I've used it before, but all you do is put a little bit. That was actually more than I even needed, really. Just put a little bit right down on the soil. I'm going to give it a little water so that it works its way down into the soil. But Not enough water to where it's already running out of the bottom of the plant. I know this plant's well hydrated already, but I don't want to start flushing this product out immediately. And that is pretty much how I take care of my plants and how I control the pests, prevent pests,